I greet you one more time and welcome you to the lesson. Today we are going to analyze the components of historical analysis. The components of historical analysis. And therefore, by the end of this lesson, we should be able to analyze the key components of historical analysis in an organizational context. But first of all, what's the meaning of historical analysis? Now, historical analysis in the context of an organization involves a systematic examination of its past to gain a deeper understanding of its evolution or to gain its understanding of its decision-making processes, and also to understand the factors that have shaped its present state. So, historical analysis goes beyond merely recounting events, but it delves into the underlying motivations, relationships, and the broader context that influenced the organization's trajectory. For us to understand all that, we need to analyze the components of historical analysis in the context of an organization. Components. Components of historical analysis. The first component is data collection. Data collection. This involves gathering a wide range of sources, including internal documents like minutes of meetings, annual reports, memos, and also external sources such as news articles, industry publications, competitors' information. You may also gather oral histories through interviews with the past and the present employees. One may also view photographs or artifacts like photographs, products, marketing materials, and so on. So that is data collection, and it may also involve utilizing archival research to access historical records and documents that may not be readily available. That is data collection. And I've identified some of the sources of data for an organization. Talked about the gathering a wide range of sources, internal documents, external documents from competitors, from publications, and so on. That's the first component of historical analysis. You cannot analyze history without data. So before you analyze history, you have to first of all look for sources of data, sources of information for the organization. So it could be documents, it could be oral sources, could be from external sources, from the present employees, from the previous employees, present managers, previous managers, look at news articles and all that. All those are sources of data. So first of all, in historical analysis, you collect data of the organization, the historical data. Two, data analysis. Data analysis. This involves examining the collected data. Examining data analysis in the context of historical analysis involves examining collected data in order to identify patterns, examining the collected data in step number one, And the purpose of examining this data is to identify patterns, trends, themes, to analyze patterns, to analyze or to identify themes that emerge over time. So because this is that you collect data right from the establishment of the organization. So by examining the collected data, one can identify patterns, one can identify trends, or even themes that emerge over time. And through data analysis, one can identify key events, can identify key one can identify key events, key decisions. You can identify key events, you can identify key decisions, and also individuals that have shaped the organization and individuals. When you read documentary data, when you listen to past employees and stakeholders, you'll be able to identify key individuals. You're able to identify decisions. You're able to identify events. You understand? These are events and individuals that have shaped the organization's history. You can't miss all that. When you go to the records of an organization, you will see who was making what decisions. You will see who was behind the events. You'll also be able to identify the trends, the patterns, and the themes by looking at historical data. So data analysis may also involve analyzing the impact of external factors. Impact of external factors because companies do not operate in a vacuum. Companies are affected by social factors, political factors, environmental factors. So by looking at the past events, one can see the impact of these external factors on the company's history. And that is possible because assuming there was, say, a recession, during a recession in a given year, you can see how did that recession affect the organization. So this analysis can help to analyze the impact of external factors such as economic conditions, technological advancements, or even regulatory changes on the organization's development. Now, the third component is interpretation and contextualization. Contextualization. Interpretation and contextualization. That means placing the organization's history within the broader historical context of its industry, society, and the global landscape. Interpretation and contextualization may also involve considering the social, political, and economic forces that influence the organization's decisions and actions. Furthermore, interpretation may mean interpreting the meaning and the significance of historical events and historical decisions in light of the available evidence and context. Interpretation and contextualization. Now, after interpreting the data that was collected and analyzed, then the fourth component of historical analysis is to construct a narrative, what we call narrative construction. narrative construction. That is to say, trying to weave together the various pieces of information into a coherent narrative that explains the organization's evolution over a period of time since its inception. Narrative construction may also mean or involve identifying the key turning points, the key challenges and successes that have shaped the organization's identity and culture. Narrative construction may as well mean highlighting the contributions of individuals, groups, and external factors to the organization's development. That is narrative construction, weaving together the various pieces, because you've made the interpretation, you've looked at the impact of external factors, you've identified the key events, you've seen the patterns, the key decisions, you've been told about individuals who've made the key decisions, you've looked at the impact of the social, political, and economic technological factors on an organization's history or development. So you come then after that to weave together these various pieces of information into a coherent narrative that explains the organization's evolution over time. Then another component of historical analysis is now the application of insights. Application of insights. Application of insights. Now, using the insights that are gained from the analysis, the interpretation, the contextualization, and the narrative construction, then one can use such insights to gain, or the insights can be that using the insights that are gained from this historical analysis, that is to say, that using the insights gained from historical analysis to inform current decision making, to inform strategic planning and organizational development is what we are referring to as application of insights. So the purpose of carrying historical analysis is so that this history of an organization, which we learned earlier, it is a resource, we can now apply it in, say, strategic planning. It can then be used in strategic planning, because after carrying out historical analysis, then one gets insights which can then be applied in strategic planning. These insights can be used in organizational development. The insights can be used in decision making and so on. Another way of applying these insights is that through identifying lessons that are learned from past successes and failures then the organization can use such successes and failures to avoid repeating mistakes or to capitalize on the opportunities. So the insights can also be applied to build a stronger organizational culture or enhance employee engagement, to foster innovation, and so on. So these are the key components of historical analysis. Number one, we said collect the data, and we saw that this data can be collected from various sources. This data can be collected from internal sources, through documents, records, and so on. It could also be through external sources. External sources, these are uh, from interviews from the current and previous employees, all right, and many other sources. Data can be collected from various sources, from company records, from previous employees, and so on. Then that data is then analyzed through examining um, and identifying trends, patterns, and themes, and so on. Then after analyzing the data, then that data is contextualized and interpreted. Then last year we've seen that based on the data that is analyzed, then it's possible to build narratives, right? Constructing narratives. Then lastly, this historical analysis can be used in various ways. What we are calling application of insights. The reason for historical analysis is to gain insights into a company's history, which can then be used in strategic planning, in organizational development, and in many other ways. Now, before we close the lesson, let us briefly identify a few approaches to historical analysis. Approaches to historical analysis. Now, there are various approaches to historical analysis, one of which is chronological approach. Chronological. One, chronological approach. This means tracing the organization's development in a linear fashion, highlighting key events and key turning points along the way. Chronological. Then we have thematic approach. Thematic approach means examining specific themes or topics of interest, such as leadership, innovation, such as social responsibility, throughout the organization's history. You analyze the themes. The third approach is comparative. Comparative approach. That is to say, comparing the organization's history with that of its competitors or other similar organizations to identify unique characteristics and best practices. Comparative approach. Then there is the counterfactual approach. Counterfactual approach. Now, the counterfactual approach is exploring the what if scenarios. Exploring the what if. Exploring the what if scenarios in order to understand the potential impact of alternative decisions or events on the organization's trajectory. So these are 4 approaches to historical analysis. And by conducting historical analysis, organizations can gain insights, which we saw here can then be applied in various ways. Okay? By conducting historical analysis, organizations can gain deeper insights, deeper understanding of their past. They can learn from their experiences and make informed decisions for the future. So, historical analysis is a valuable tool for building a strong foundation for sustainable and sustainable growth and success. That's all for today's lesson. Assignment: What are the different approaches to historical analysis and how can each be applied to understand the organization's history? 2. What are the key sources of information used in conducting a historical analysis of an organization and how are they evaluated for reliability and validity? 3. How can the findings of historical analysis be used to inform current decision making, strategic planning, and organizational development? 4. What ethical considerations should be taken into account when conducting a historical analysis of an organization, especially when dealing with sensitive or controversial issues? In our next lesson, we will study mission stated and mission perceived. Bye.